Hello everyone, I'm John with JP Strategic Investments, and today we're going to go over how a Joe Biden presidency will affect Tesla and their stock. I'll go over all of Biden's proposed policies relating to the auto industry and clean energy, and I'll give my opinion on how they will affect Tesla. I'm not going to do any political analysis here. I'm purely going to analyze how these policies will affect Tesla, and I'm going to keep my analysis as unbiased as possible. So with that said, let's dive right in. So the two main things that are going to affect Tesla here are Biden's policies on business and his policies on the environment. So first let's go over the business side of things, because there's only one major policy that we know about from Biden's proposed plans that will affect Tesla, and that is the increase in the corporate tax rate from 21% to 28%. So this would obviously decrease Tesla's profit, but it would also affect all businesses, meaning that it would also hurt their competitors. That being said, because Tesla's profits are currently very small, this increase in taxes could potentially affect their profitability. This won't matter too much for the success of the business in the long term because Tesla has plenty of cash and their margins will increase as they achieve further economies of scale. Although it could definitely have an effect on their stock in the short term, not only because of the effect on profits, but also because an increase in the corporate tax rate will have a negative effect on the market in general. And with Tesla now being a large part of the S&P 500, their stock will be more affected by broader market moves than before. One thing to note on this policy, though, is that if Republicans maintain the Senate after the Georgia runoffs, then it's unlikely that Biden will be able to pass a major corporate tax reform like this, at least until the midterm elections in 2 years when the Democrats would have another opportunity to take the Senate. So now that we've gone over the business side of things, let's talk about the environmental policies that Biden has proposed and how those will affect Tesla. Biden's environmental plan involves a variety of policies and spending totaling $2 trillion over the course of the next 4 years. Considering the fact that Congress has spent several months now debating a COVID relief bill that's half that size, I think it's safe to say that with a Republican Senate, not all of these policies will be passed. But let's just go through them and do some analysis here. So the first thing that Biden wants to do here is help existing auto manufacturers retool their plants to produce electric vehicles and create 1 million jobs in the auto industry centered around electric vehicles with an emphasis on unionization. So first of all, the retooling of existing auto manufacturing plants is obviously something that Tesla does not need because they only produce electric vehicles. Most legacy automakers, on the other hand, currently have billions in manufacturing tools and other assets that will basically become worthless as EVs take over. Not to mention the fact that retooling these factories would cost these automakers huge amounts of money and require these plants to be shut down for extended periods of time. That's not a good position to be in, and Biden wants to help these companies with the cost and logistics of this retooling, most likely through government grants and tax incentives. So while this will not directly hurt Tesla, it is a huge help to their competitors and gives them a chance to accelerate their EV programs. As far as the new jobs created in the auto industry, it's hard to say how those will affect Tesla without knowing exactly what those jobs will be. Although the push towards unionization is worrisome for Tesla because they are the only major US auto company whose workforce is not part of an auto union. As a result of this, Tesla auto workers tend to make less than those of other auto companies by a fair margin. Tesla's wages for auto workers are roughly in line with what is considered Tier 2 auto union wages, starting at around $17 an hour. On average, auto union workers get paid much more. For example, the average hourly worker at GM made $30 an hour in 2019. It's hard to estimate exactly how much the average hourly worker gets paid at Tesla, but if we look at data from the job listing site Indeed, we can see some of the estimates for Tesla's different hourly positions. These estimates show that the average production worker at Tesla makes around $18 an hour, and production leads make roughly $21 an hour. Even the average production supervisor has a lower annual salary than a production worker at GM. Now, some of you will look at this and say Tesla doesn't pay their workers enough. Others might say that union workers are overcompensated. Regardless of what you think, the point is that if Tesla workers were to unionize, then Tesla would most likely have to increase their average hourly wage by up to 50%. Considering that wages are estimated to make up about $2,400 of the cost for Tesla to make each car, that would mean that this wage increase could add up to $1,200 to the cost for Tesla to make each vehicle. Or in other words, Tesla would be making roughly $1,200 less in profit for each vehicle sold. At Tesla's current production capacity in the US, that's a loss of almost $600 million per year. Needless to say, that's a huge impact on Tesla's profits. The next part of Biden's plan is to increase demand for electric vehicles through things like consumer tax credits, government purchases, and regulatory penalties and credits. So there are some negatives and some positives here for Tesla. Any knowledgeable Tesla investor knows that Tesla does not have a lack of demand. In fact, they have so much demand that their production can't even keep up with it. This means that consumer tax credits won't help Tesla because they will sell every car they make regardless. In fact, this will actually hurt Tesla because this will help their competitors whose EV programs are struggling with demand. The government purchases also won't benefit Tesla from a demand standpoint, although they could turn into some nice long-term contracts, and it never hurts to get any free advertising. The regulatory penalties and credits of course will help Tesla because they will most likely generate more regulatory credit revenue, similar to the revenue they currently get from European regulations. Although this will only be a temporary boost to revenue, as eventually these will phase out as EVs become the majority of new vehicles sold. The next part of Biden's plan is to create 500,000 new EV charging stations across the country. While this may help relieve some of the range anxiety that potential EV buyers may have, this will help Tesla's competitors far more than it helps them. Tesla already has a huge supercharging network covering the entire country and is adding new charging stations every day. In fact, this is one of Tesla's competitive moats. Right now, Tesla is the only car company that has their own charging network that covers the entire country. Customers of other automakers have to rely on third-party charging stations that are generally more expensive, slower, and are not optimized to their specific vehicle. Finally, the last part of Biden's plan is to accelerate battery research and development and invest in battery storage. Now again, there are some negatives and positives here for Tesla. As far as battery research and development, again, this will help Tesla's competitors more than it helps them. Tesla is obviously years ahead of their competitors when it comes to battery technology, and if the government will be providing subsidies to these companies to accelerate their battery programs, then that will be a huge help to Tesla's competitors. Now, the argument could be made that this will help Tesla just as much because they will be getting subsidies as well, and I would be inclined to agree with that opinion, except there's one problem. The cost decline of batteries, like any product, follows a cost curve that is governed by certain laws. If you've been a Tesla investor for any long period of time, then you've probably heard Elon Musk or Cathie Wood talk about this concept many times in regard to different aspects of Tesla's business. There's a lot of math that goes into this, but the main point is that Tesla is getting to a point where battery cost decline can't move as fast as it did before. The main reason for this is that eventually there's almost no more room to reduce expenses. As costs reach this point, then the amount of cost reduction per dollar spent on R&D will also decrease. In other words, if Tesla and GM were to get the same amount in government funding to accelerate their battery programs, Tesla will likely not be able to reduce the cost of their batteries by as large of a percentage as GM will. Not because GM will be more efficient in using this money, but because Tesla has less room to cut costs than GM because they've already reduced costs by so much. The second part here about investing in battery storage could be a positive for Tesla, but again, there's a catch. As I mentioned before, Tesla's battery production is one of the major constraints keeping them from meeting the huge demand that they have for their vehicles as well as their battery storage products. This means that while Tesla could possibly win a lot of these contracts because of their lead in battery technology, there's a good chance that their battery production will still be lagging behind their demand at this point. It's basically the same reason that consumer tax credits won't help Tesla. If they can't meet the demand that they already have, then more demand doesn't really do anything for them. So, to sum up the effects of Biden's proposed policies on Tesla here, they will benefit in the short term from some of these policies, but the overall effect in the long term is negative. The main reason is that Tesla doesn't need many of these policies to help them out, while on the other hand their competitors are in desperate need of these. One thing we need to remember here is that long term it's all about market share. Eventually EVs will make up all of new cars sold, and at that point it's all about who has the most market share. Tesla currently has roughly 80% of the EV market share in the US, and even if Biden's policies help Tesla just as much as their competitors, one thing they will do is keep legacy automakers alive by boosting their EV programs. If Biden does not help these other automakers retool their factories and subsidize their battery programs, it's very likely that one or more of these legacy automakers could go out of business, and Tesla would easily be able to gobble up the market share left behind. So while Biden's plan will accelerate the adoption of electric vehicles and clean energy, it will most likely leave Tesla with less market share for the long term. And honestly, I think Elon Musk is okay with that. As far as what this means for the stock, in the long term it does mean that Tesla stock will most likely not be able to climb as high as it could have without Biden's policies. That being said, it will likely not hurt the stock in the short term. I hope you found this analysis helpful, and if you did, please consider liking and subscribing. And don't forget to comment below on how you think these policies will affect Tesla. And other than that, have a great day.